So we're moving on to the next page in the notes. And I made an adjustment to my table of contents that I want to show you. Let's come up here. So back on my table of contents page, I actually made another entry, and I kind of put the word vocab next to the one we just put in. That was on page 2. And now steps for converting fractions to decimals is going to be on page 3. So moving to page 3, I just make sure to mark it page 3. And at the top, steps to convert fractions to decimals. And step number 1 is going to be simplify the fraction by the greatest common factor if common factors exist between the numerator and denominator. And this is so that we can be a little bit more precise in our multiplication and our division, and it kind of eases our time. So for example, if I was given the fraction 12 over 48, I know that both 12 and 48 are even numbers. They're certainly divisible by 2. But is that its greatest common factor? I don't think so. In fact, 12 is the greatest common factor. So if I divide both the numerator and denominator by 12, I wind up with 1/4. Now, if I didn't know that 12 was the greatest common denominator, I could divide by 2, in which case I'd wind up with 6 over 24, and hopefully maybe then I'd recognize that it's 6, or I might take out another 2, but I'd have to go until I'm completely simplified. Step number 2 is to take the numerator and to make it the dividend. Step number 3 is to take the denominator and make it the divisor. Because in step 4, we're going to compute or calculate or execute a long division problem. So if you're not quite sure what the divisor and dividend is, it would look like this. So your divisor goes outside your box of your dividend. In other words, you're trying to find out how many times your divisor can go into your dividend. Important part here is because we're trying to convert to a fraction, no remainders. We need to determine, is our answer a repeating terminating decimal or a repeating non-terminating decimal? So let's do 2 examples. 5 over 8. I'm sorry, you guys couldn't see that. So I'm going to push that up. So if we have 5 over 8, we have 8 going into 5, right? We know that 8 cannot go into 5. So that's when we put our decimal up and we add a 0. 8 goes into 50 6 times. That's 48, leaving me with 2. I'm going to have to add another 0. 8 goes into 20 twice, 16. 4, add another 0. And 8 goes into 40 5 times. In other words, 5 over 8 is equal to 0.625. Second example is, what if we were given -1 2/3? Well, first thing we're going to have to do is convert to an improper fraction. So when I do that, I do 3 times 1 plus 2, and I get 5 over 3. And I just simply bring the sign over, so I really wind up with -5 divided by 3. And looking at this, the rules of integers, I know that my final answer, my decimal, should be a negative as well. So I'm just going to remember to keep that sign and make 3 the divisor going into 5. So 3 does go into 5 one time, bringing down 3, leaving me with 2. Here's where I'm going to add in the decimal and add that 0. 3 goes into 26 times, so minus 18. I'm left with another 2, bring down another 0 6 times, and I start to see that that's going to repeat. So in other words, -1 2/3 is equivalent to -1.6 with a bar notation. So those are two examples. This one we completed a terminating decimal. This one we completed a non-terminating decimal. We're going to move to page 4 in a moment. I'm going to stop the video again, and we'll move on to page 4 and talk about the steps to convert decimals to fractions, starting with terminating.